The most interesting and possibly the most important offseason in Golden State Warriors history is about to begin. And we've got you covered here. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On. I am your humble host, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. You can follow the program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. I'm recording this on a Monday night. It is May 15th. Look, if you've spent the last few days in the fetal position, in the corner of a dark room, sucking on your thumb, that's okay, Dub Nation. There is no right or wrong in terms of how to deal with your team, and more importantly, a dynasty being your team on the verge of collapse. It's traumatizing. It's depressing. As Stephen Curry said following Game 6 in their depressing, disappointing loss to the Lakers, he said he was shell-shocked. I think all of us, at least those of us who consider ourselves proud members of Dub Nation, I think we can relate. We can understand just how miserable of a feeling it has been. But with that loss sets up, again, quite possibly the biggest, most important, very fascinating offseason in Golden State Warriors history. And, from my position, it certainly does become damn interesting. This is going to be hopefully fun. The first item on the agenda, what today's show is going to encompass is recapping everything that the Golden State Warriors players and coaches have said over the last few days. The biggest stars on the team answered questions the night of Game 6. And then the rest of the team conducted exit interviews over the weekend at Chase Center. And so out of that came some terrific sound. So I'm going to play a lot of sound from what a lot of players said. Some of it may be interesting. Some of it may not be very interesting. Before I get into the sound of the exit interviews, though, one player who has not been interviewed and one player who, sorry, it's not even a player, one individual who hasn't spoken yet is Bob Myers. And in my humble opinion, he is the most important individual of all, top to bottom, of every human being at Chase Center involved in the Golden State Warriors dynasty, with the exception of maybe the owners, Joe Lacob and Peter Guber. Bob Myers is everything. He is the brain of this operation. If Bob Myers decides to leave, the dynasty is over. And there's a lot of reasons for that. For starters, anyone who doesn't think Bob Myers is important, and I'm going to record a show later this week recapping his career with the Warriors and explaining why I value him so much. But chief and foremost is he is the one who makes all the decisions pertaining to draft picks, free agents, re-signing players, giving players extensions. Nobody's perfect. Okay. Like when we look through his resume in the show later this week. And again, if you follow either me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow or this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs, we always announce there when next shows are. This show actually that I'm recording right now is not live. Just because I really wanted to get to everything that was said by the Warriors over these last few days. And there's going to be time all offseason to answer questions, for interaction and engagement with everyone who has questions or has takes they want to express. Believe me, there'll be plenty of time all offseason for that. But I had to get to so much today. And first and foremost, again, is Bob Myers, who again, I've been telling you, if you watch this show, if you listen to this show, You've heard me say repeatedly that I've heard from trusted sources inside that Myers doesn't want to actually go anywhere. Bob Myers is very much a part of the Warriors. He has a very strong relationship with Joe Lacob. Joe Lacob has made two offers to Bob Myers through this season. Lacob admittedly said so himself. It was not disputed. Reports are indicating that Myers wants a couple weeks this now that the season's over to think about what he wants to do next in his career and his future. What I've heard is that Myers doesn't want to go anywhere. His contract is up. He will be a quote unquote free agent soon. I can't remember if his contract expires at the beginning or the end of June. But what I have heard repeatedly and is that he wants money. He wants to get paid what he feels he deserves, and what he feels he deserves is to be the highest paid executive in the NBA. He's deserved it. How could he not? I mean, has there been a more successful executive? Considering most of his draft picks fall on the later side of the first round, nearly all of his picks are like number 28, second rounders. His success rate between trades, between free agents is incredible. It's exemplary. And again, later this week, there will be a show dedicated just to Bob Myers because there's a lot of folks out there, and it surprises me, who don't appreciate how excellent of a GM and president of operations Bob Myers is. But long story short, there's a lot of reports that he might not want to come back, that that he's going to take off a little time. I'm telling you from what I've heard. And then Connor Letourneau is releasing a story tomorrow, Tuesday, for the Chronicle that's going to repeat what I'm about to say here, which is that Bob Myers right now, the reason why he has not conducted exit interviews is because he's scouting potential draft picks. He's at a combine right now, and he's reportedly going to be doing his exit interview next week when he comes back from his visit scouting potential picks. The Warriors have the number 19 pick in the NBA draft this year. And we're going to be doing a mock draft, by the way, the Locked On Podcast Network. Now that the offseason's here, I'm definitely going to be doing my research in terms of who the Warriors could potentially sign and draft. But long story short, Bob Myers, I don't think he's going anywhere, provided Joe Lacob opens up the pocketbook and makes him the highest paid executive in the NBA. And truth is, he deserves it. Again, besides the fact that he was behind the wheel constructing a dynasty. For those of you that really put a lot of value and emphasis on Steve Kerr, don't forget who hired him. All right. It was Bob Myers. Now, granted, Joe Lacob's the owner, probably has to approve most, if not all, of Myers' decisions. But nonetheless, it is Myers making those decisions. He is the architect who crafted this dynasty, one of the greatest runs in sports history. So let's hope that he comes back, because if he doesn't come back, there's a very strong possibility Draymond Green will also not come back. And I'm going to touch on that and so much more in a second, because Draymond said some interesting things immediately following Game 6. But Draymond doesn't come back. Who knows how the Klay Thompson extension talks go if Bob Myers isn't here? You're suddenly being left with Mike Dunleavy Jr., maybe, taking over the role of who this team drafts, who makes the big decisions in terms of whether or not, let's say, it's either Kuminga or nothing. I mean, that is a predicament this team might face. I would, if you don't have someone like Bob Myers making sure that the right decisions are made, this organization is going to start spiraling out of control and crash hard. So look, Bob Myers is a savant when it comes to the basketball game. He's not only great at player relations, he's great, again, as scouting talent. And again, he's currently at the draft combine right now. And that's not what an individual who's going to step away. That's not the kind of action you would interpret from someone who's going to step away. If Bob Myers was planning on moving on, chances are he wasn't at the combine. Chances are he wasn't still scheduling his exit interview. I don't think Bob Myers is going anywhere. I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but I am very confident, and I've spoken to people inside that building. Bob Myers, provided the Warriors give him the bag, which is what he wants, and he's deserved based off his track record. In my humble opinion, if you're an executive if you're a general manager and under your tenure, your team wins 4 titles in 8 years, wins 6 Western Conference Finals titles in 8 years, yeah, I think you've earned being the highest paid executive in the NBA. And so a lot of this, sorry, that was a big old bug just flew behind me. So a lot of what's been going on this season with Myers turning down the 2 contract offers by Lacob, a lot of that is negotiating. And let's just hope that Bob Myers comes back. So when I come back with the show, I'm going to talk about personnel. There's a lot of huge decisions that need to be made by the Golden State Warriors. And I'm going to break down who's up for free agency, who may stay, who may go, because this team cannot continue on the same course if they want to still be world championship contenders. I don't think they can stay on the same course if they want to continue being playoff contenders, because fortunes do turn that fast in the NBA. So we'll talk about that and so much more in just a moment. I got to first give some love, though, to the title sponsor of today's program, which is PrizePicks, a super fun application. It's daily fantasy sports made easy, and it's all about over-unders for individuals. There's 4 teams remaining in the NBA playoffs. Nikola Jokic will be a fun player to bet on. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum. PrizePicks is all about making bets on the individuals. Are they going to score more or less than 28 points? Or is someone going to grab more or less than 10 rebounds? Is someone going to pass more or less than 8 assists? And that doesn't just apply to the NBA. You can cross-reference across all sports. You can bet on Major League Soccer players, Major League Baseball players, a certain amount of runs given up by a pitcher, for example, a certain amount of goals scored by an individual. That's what PrizePicks is all about. And one of the many perks of PrizePicks, if you're watching this and you're in California, it's legal. You can actually play PrizePicks here in California, and you don't have to deal with sketchy wire services. Cash withdrawals are really easy. And it's just a ton of fun, and the odds are awesome. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So if you got $100 and you deposit that as a first-time player, you're going to start playing with $200 immediately, because PrizePicks will match, but you have to use the promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, they'll match you with $100. And if you only got $50, $25, $10, whatever it is, they will match it. But don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, Kyle and Mills will join me. Time to be determined. We will go live for that show. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dub, so you know exactly when we start in case you want to join the action live. And Kylan and I, one of the 2 shows we record this week will be a 2-parter. We're going to go for an hour, and there's so much to discuss. The draft is coming up. The Warriors are going to be involved in free agency if they want to reestablish themselves as legitimate world championship contenders next year. There's going to be a lot of trade talk, and you better believe I've already started doing some research on who the Warriors can make trades with. Jordan Poole, and much to my much against what I want to say, is Jonathan Kuminga. There is a possibility he's going to get traded, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But there will be a lot of discussion on this show about who the Warriors can potentially get for these 2 players. But first things first, the Warriors conducted exit interviews. This is a standard protocol for every NBA team when the season ends. They come home, they do their exit interviews, and then it's hasta la vista, it's sayonara, it's adios, and then it's the summer. And then for some of these players, that's the last time you'll ever see them representing your team. And exit interviews are either worthless or they're worthwhile. It depends on who you're asking questions to, what the topic is. So, for example, Dante DiVincenzo, who I thought was a fantastic free agent acquisition this year for the Golden State Warriors. I honestly don't know if the Warriors make the playoffs this year if DiVincenzo is not on this roster. Unfortunately, didn't have the greatest of postseasons. But then again, he's 6'4", and I don't know what the team really expected, putting that much pressure on Donte DiVincenzo when they clearly needed more size and they just needed a bigger, more physical player against the Lakers than DiVincenzo. But nonetheless, he was an awesome addition. And the reason why this attribution is worth less is largely because Donte DiVincenzo is going to sit here and tell you he loved playing for the Warriors. He wants to come back, but I'll explain why he probably won't. Here is Donte DiVincenzo.
You obviously, made your presence known during this season, but, you have a lot of decisions to make this offseason, specifically with your player option. How are you looking at this summer? And is there a party that sees yourself back here next year? And how are you looking at that going into this offseason? How are you approaching that option?
I haven't thought, to be completely honest, I haven't really thought that much about anything in the offseason. Like, I thought we would still be playing right now, to be completely honest. What I will say is I absolutely love being a Golden State Warrior. The guys in the locker room, the coaching staff, the training staff, from day one, it's felt like home. So obviously I would love to be a Warrior. But I'll cross that bridge, we'll figure it out with the front office and everything. We'll cross that bridge once we get there. My goal, this summer is to just get better, to be able to take a step next year for the Warriors and, try to expand even more, to be in a system familiar with and, just grow from there and, just get better as a player and as a man.
For 1 year, Donte DiVincenzo was a member of the Golden State Warriors. It was a pleasure having you in the San Francisco Bay Area, Mr. DiVincenzo, and it really saddens me that he's gone, but he's gone. Donte DiVincenzo was signed as a mid-level exception last year by the Warriors. They didn't even use the whole mid-level to sign him. They signed him to a 2-year deal. Unfortunately, the second year is a player option, and the amount is for $4 million and change. And there is no chance in hell that Donte DiVincenzo will come back and play for $4 million and change. His value is far, far higher than that. He has exceeded the value of his contract. And the Warriors, unfortunately, are in a position where they can't even offer him a new mid-level exception. That is official as part of the new collective bargaining agreement. Teams that enter the second apron of the luxury tax, meaning I believe in this case it's approximately $17 million over the cap, and the Warriors are easily going to exceed that. Any team that goes over that amount will not be allowed to have a mid-level exception. So the only offer the Warriors can make to Donte DiVincenzo is the amount that they paid him last year plus approximately 10%. So which would be somewhere near $5 million a year. Donte DiVincenzo, unfortunately for the Warriors and for this fan base, who I think most did come to really like him, it's out of Is that how you say goodbye in Italian? To Donte DiVincenzo. So that is where exit interviews don't have a ton of value, and DiVincenzo will be sorely missed. Now, besides DiVincenzo, though, the rest of the clips I'm going to play are very worthwhile. And I'm going to start with Draymond Green. A lot of news came down. The last show I hosted was immediately following Game 6. This was last Friday night. And fortunately, that evening, I believe, we learned that Draymond Green, in fact, wants to come back. And according to The Athletic, Shams Charania and Anthony Slater of The Athletic, more specifically, the Warriors have already started negotiations with Draymond Green's representation, which is a clutch. So that is great news. Why don't we hear from Draymond Green immediately following Game 6, glowingly praising the team that he's played with his entire career. Here's Draymond Green.
On first part of this, what was going on with your calf tonight? And although you said you're still processing everything, what are going to be, some of your primary focuses this offseason?
My number one primary focus is my family. That is always the most important thing to me. As far as my calf, I don't know if it was a cramp or if I pulled it a little bit, but when I went back to the back, it loosened up, so I figured it was just a cramp. And I would have went back in the game. Bob stopped me, said we're down 22 points with 5.5, 6 minutes to go. You go back out there and you tear your calf, and then you're rehabbing the rest of the summer trying to chase a 22-point lead. It's not smart, and we're not doing it. So I could have went back in the game, and I think that's a good sign. Other priorities, I have a media business I'm trying to build. I'll continue to try to build. And then, we'll see what happens as far as my contract goes. Obviously, I have an opt-out. Everybody know about that. I know about that. I'm aware of that. But as I've told you guys, for years, I want to be a Warrior for the rest of my life. I want to ride out with the same dudes I rode in with. And, I think we've put the work in to make that happen. Here we are with our worst season as a whole since 2014. And yet, we had a chance to make another run. So it's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems. But, those are some of my priorities. Travel a little bit, refill the cup, possibly play FIBA. We'll see. And work my ass off and be better next year. It's my priorities.
Draymond, don't play FIBA. All right. You've already proven yourself internationally. You're a two-time Olympic gold medalist. I don't think the team needs you, or they need you. I don't think it's worth it. But look, that was a revealing interview for a lot of reasons. One, it reminded everyone just how much Draymond and a lot of other players on that roster value Bob Myers. There are a lot of stories that have come out about Myers and how much empathy he shows toward his players. That goes a long way. There's a huge reason why some of these players, including Draymond, will take pay cuts to play for this team. Now, in regards to Draymond's contract situation, again, he has a player option for $27 million and change. No one knows for sure what's going to happen with that. Common sense to me dictates there's no chance in hell he's going to sign that 1 year player option, simply because there's too much demand out there. On Friday's show, I listed approximately 20 out of the 30 NBA teams who could use a Draymond Green and would make the effort to bring a player of his caliber on their roster if possible. Just because only approximately 5 teams out there currently have the cap space to make a legitimate offer to Draymond Green, all 5 of those teams being lottery-bound teams, non-playoff teams, it doesn't mean the other 15 who could use and would probably want Draymond, that they can't easily get creative and make the salary cap room. You see that all the time in the NBA. So if the Warriors want to keep him, and it sounds like, the report came out from The Athletic that they do want to keep him. Draymond Green, saying all the right things in terms of staying with the only team he's played for his entire life, the Golden State Warriors. So hopefully that marriage continues. Hopefully Draymond Green comes back, because a player of his caliber, again, it's not easy to find. And if Draymond Green does leave, then the dynasty's officially, there's like whatever, even if there's doubt following any decisions, there will be none. If Draymond leaves, so too does the dynasty. Now, this team obviously needs reinforcements. They can no longer just rely on Draymond Green being your primary big. And in this season's case, him and Looney being pretty much it for your front court size. The team has to do more. They have to give Draymond and Looney help. But again, great news in terms of Draymond at least possibly coming back to the Warriors. I envision if it happens, it's going to be a multi-year deal, 3 or 4 years, probably along the same lines in terms of annual salary that he makes now. He'll probably get, my guess is, a 3 or 4 year deal, either 3 years, 80 million, 4 years, 100 million, so that he hopefully retires as a member of the Golden State Warriors. Now, a player that has become very synonymous with Draymond Green this year is Jordan Poole. And Jordan Poole is part of the exit interviews. And Jordan Poole is someone who, Kylan and I think we're going to spend a lot of time discussing possible trade destinations, because if this team is going to make some serious changes this year, this offseason for next year, Jordan Poole is in all likelihood going to be one of the players who will be moved in order to create improvement on this roster, get some more size on this roster. I know, again, I'm recording this on Monday night. It's May 15th. I know Stephen Curry came out and had some glowing praise for Jordan Poole, saying he's the key to the future. I love Stephen Curry. He's, to me, the Joe Montana of Bay Area sports in the modern era. I didn't think anyone could reach Joe's level, yet here is Stephen Curry. He's my favorite basketball player ever, one of the greatest players ever. And the fact that he still is in the running to get that 5th title is all the evidence I need to show me that this team needs to continue to pursue world championships for Stephen Curry's case. But at the same time, Steph is not the GM. There's a reason why different individuals have different roles. So regardless of the reasoning for Stephen Curry praising Jordan Poole, I don't think that's enough of a reason to keep him. A lot of the speculation this year centered around the punch, Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole, and the aftershocks of that incident, the ramifications. I personally believe, and I know I'm not the only one, I believe that the worst part about that incident was Draymond having to react to it in a way that isn't himself. He could not be the same brash, vocal leader he was prior to that incident, because he suddenly had to be very careful. His reputation was tattered after that. But a lot of people wondered how that incident affected Jordan Poole long term. And again, we'll talk about Jordan Poole a lot in future episodes. Today, I just want to play primarily and focus on what most of the team said in the aftermath of Game 6 and in this weekend's exit interviews at Chase Center. So Jordan Poole was asked about the ramifications of that incident, whether it had any long-term effects. And here is what Jordan Poole had to say about the Draymond Green punch and whether or not it had lasting effects.
When you look back, how much do you feel like maybe the events in the preseason impacted the whole season? Did it feel like it lingered to you, and what was the impact that it had on this year?
I mean, we ready to the second round of the playoffs. You know, we had a good season, and guys stepped up. We had a lot of exciting moments. So I mean, I don't think there's anything that was, changing any of that.
When you look,
first of all, this was not a good season. I mean, by most team standards, yes, making it to the conference semifinals is something you could write home about, because you probably don't get to that level that often. The Golden State Warriors of the 2000s, of the 90s, of the 80s, conference semifinals, great achievement. You consider that season a success. When your team is a world championship contender, when your team is the reigning, defending world champion, I wouldn't call that a success. You just heard what Draymond Green said about the season. Almost completely the opposite. Now, in regards to the punch, I still do believe firmly, from what I've heard, and I've said this on the show for months, that the ramifications, the aftershock of the incident, in a lot of ways was overblown. Although I guess it depends on who you ask. I've interviewed a lot of current and former professional athletes about it, and their answers differ. One will say, not a big deal. This happens all the time. The next person will say, I've never seen a punch like that. I don't know how you can recover from that. So a lot of it depends on perspective. But in terms of what I've heard in regards to Jordan Poole's feelings on it himself, it did not have long-term ramifications. He said so himself there. Jordan Poole and Draymond Green have always had lockers right next to each other. They did maintain a relationship after the punch. But nonetheless, some people still feel that it did have an effect. And again, my feeling of it And I'm echoing, I think, I forgot who said this as well. I heard this on a podcast recently. I apologize for forgetting to properly attribute. But I do agree with the sentiment that if this incident hurt anyone, it was Draymond Green, because it suddenly limited his leadership capabilities, and he couldn't be the same brash, in your face type leader that he previously was, because he went overboard. There's no way to defend what he did. So, but nonetheless, that was Jordan Poole's reaction to it. He said it wasn't a big deal, but he did struggle this season. He, in a lot of ways, outside of his scoring average, he regressed this season. His numbers drastically went down when it came time to the postseason, also known as the time of the year when he was needed the most. So the team has a lot of decisions to make this offseason. And I think that the popular opinion is that Draymond Green should be on the trading block. I support that notion. I think his time here has worn out. And I think, given the way the salary cap is structured and how limited the Golden State Warriors are in terms of looking at free agency, for example, to get help, you can't. Your hands are completely tied in terms of signing free agents. So one of the only ways you can upgrade your roster, or at least revise it and modify it, is to trade Jordan Poole. You'd get some salary cap relief potentially, because Jordan Poole is going to make close to $30 million next year. It's year one of a 5-year guaranteed deal. And I do think a lot of teams out there look at Jordan Poole as the type of player who could use a fresh start. Thus, hopefully, his trade value is not diminished after that very poor postseason that he just had. So anyway, so that's Jordan Poole. And again, we'll talk a lot more about Poole this offseason. There's just a lot to be said. I want to shift gears now to the young players, Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody more specifically. If you watch this show consistently, you know my feelings on Kuminga. I love the kid. He has the potential to be a superstar. And I understand his perspective in terms of being frustrated for completely falling out of the rotation for no good reason whatsoever in the playoffs. Interestingly enough, though, and this is where his comments in the exit interview were worthwhile, he backtracked a lot on what he initially said during and after the postseason. So let's first hear from Jonathan Kuminga, who was asked about his lack of minutes in the playoffs. And Kuminga answered that question rather eloquently. Here is the young 20-year-old.
Dante was talking about just the role changes towards the end of the season, and how it kind of got harder when everybody came back. You were one of those guys that when Wiggs was out, you got a lot of minutes. What was that like for you when players come back and you guys are going into a postseason stretch, to have those minutes, your minutes change, and what did you learn from that experience?
Man, I had to get adapted to it. No, it was just my second year in the league, and I feel like the people that came back have established more, especially here, and it's nothing that we really could do to change that. So I just had to get used to it, and that's it.
Do you feel that you got enough kind of runtime to grow your game more this season?
Oh,
and
definitely.
How did you grow?
I mean, just a lot of people being out, getting my chances to go out there and play a lot of minutes, and kind of learning the game and being around the team more and just playing more. I feel like that really helped me, and knowing what I really need to work on coming back next season.
And that's an entirely different verbiage context from what he was saying during the playoffs and immediately after the playoffs. When Shams Charania and Anthony Slater, in another report for The Athletic, wrote, quote, "The Warriors and Kuminga's representatives are expected to discuss his future this offseason," league sources say. Golden State will need to decide whether Kuminga will receive a full-time role moving forward, and if not, league sources say the number 7 pick in the 2021 draft will want to be somewhere he can play more, unquote. Look, the Golden State Warriors bungled this 100%, and I'll tell you why. For starters, when they drafted him as the number 7 pick, they drafted a kid who is not a role player. Jonathan Kuminga will either be someone who has a full-time role in the NBA or who is going to be out of this league at some point in the near and not distant future. Jonathan Kuminga is either going to be a superstar in this game or he's probably not going to make it. And you cannot treat him the way you've been treating him, where you're 1 minute you're using him consistently, next minute sparsely. Never mind the fact that the way Kerr has treated him and Moody this year would kill most people's confidence. I mean, there's no way that's the proper methodology for teaching. But in Kuminga's case, he showed a lot of improvement this year. For example, in the 22 games that Wiggins missed because of injury late in the season, Kuminga averaged 13.4 points. He shot 56.3% from the field. He shot 44.4% from 3. Those are all exemplary numbers. He also averaged 4.3 rebounds and 2 assists in just 24.1 minutes played. Which means if he was playing 36 minutes, which is what his starter plays, he'd be averaging 6.5 rebounds per game. All right. That's good. That is good for a perimeter type player like him. He was grossly misused. He fortunately said the right things there. And I'm guessing the reason for that is he doesn't want to damage relationships. He's reportedly going to be spending his offseason playing in major markets like New York, LA, and Miami to showcase his skills. And the bottom line is this: I don't want him to go. I love Kuminga. I think the potential is real. And I think Steve Kerr needs to wake up in the sense that his demands for people and his players more specifically subscribing to the quote unquote culture of the Warriors, that approach has to change because the culture is not Steve Kerr. The culture was Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson with a fantastic supporting cast around them. Klay Thompson is no longer the player he was. Draymond Green is no longer the player he was. Stephen Curry still is, but that's just one player. It's no longer a threesome who can carry a strong supporting cast to a world championship. Those days are over. All right. And because those days are over, Steve Kerr, if he's going to continue leading this team, has to adapt. It's not the other way around. You cannot have a player like Jonathan Kuminga, who has the talent to be a superstar in this game. You can't expect a player like him to adapt to Kerr's rigid minute distribution system because, again, while that worked when you had 3 of the greatest players ever in the history of this game all playing together in their prime, 2 of those 3 players have dropped off, and you can no longer count on them. You now need the Jonathan Kumingas of the world. You need them. So that's how it's good. That's how it is, plain and simple. Now, speaking of Steve Kerr, and I do want to sincerely apologize. This show's going to go a little long. We're supposed to go 30 minutes, but the Jonathan Kuminga thing is, and the bottom line is, if the Warriors are not going to promise him a full-time role, and a full-time role does not mean a starter, but a full-time role does mean 25 plus minutes a game. And if the Warriors cannot make that kind of commitment to Jonathan Kuminga, then you got to trade him. Okay, you got to get something back for him because right now you wasted your number 2 pick on James Wiseman, got nothing back for that. Gary Payne II was there as your own free agent, and in a salary dump move, you didn't re-sign him and then traded for him later while dumping Wiseman's salary in the process. You can't also do that with Kuminga. To strike out on 2 lottery picks in a row, and the worst part about that is you're striking out on those lottery picks not because they're bad, but because your head coach won't play them. And the reason for the why of your head coach not playing them, it's either his own stubborn insistence on what he thinks the right way to do things is, or your veterans are telling you they don't want veterans to play with them and not young kids, but you can't acquiesce all the time to your veterans. Steve Kerr, you got to be the right leader. Sometimes that means not listening to your veterans, and especially when your veterans are no longer at the peak of their powers. It's one thing if Klay was the Klay of 2016. Same with Draymond. That's not the versions of them you're getting now. They're turning into role players. So And you need Kuminga. You need Moses Moody. They're on your roster. They're under contract. They're talented. It is criminal to not play them. Here is Moses Moody in the exit interviews. This was good as well. This was very worthwhile because Moses Moody has always been candid. I mean, it's this show where we play the soundbite routinely of Moody.
I mean, it sucks.
That was an answer to being asked about his stay ready approach. Yeah, it sucks. And here's Moody again talking about this season.
You guys last year, you won a championship last year. And when you look at last year's team versus this year's team, obviously two different teams. But what do you think were the main differences from your point of view that you saw that were different in terms of attitude and approach and all those things?
Last year's team was a lot older, with Belly and obviously GP coming back, Juan, D. Lee, Otto. So it's just a lot of guys who've been in the league for a while. So they just kind of approached the game with a different. I mean, they've been here before. They've done it so much. So you can just kind of feel that.
This year?
Obviously, the team's a lot younger, so guys coming in trying to figure it out, and a lot of guys had really good years. So that was that, but yeah, that's just the difference, I feel.
Following up on Monty's question, and I guess Janie's as well, you and Jonathan and just a lot of the other younger guys, even James when he was still with the team, had a lot more responsibility put on you guys. How was that as those older guys left, being put in that position, maybe not necessarily knowing when you're going to be called on, but then having to be inserted, trying to learn, trying to maintain kind of what you guys were doing last year?
Mm-hmm. We struggled a bit early on in the year, just losing some games. It was on the road at home. I don't remember, it was on the road a lot, but I mean, that's just experiences you can learn from. The situation is what it is, so you just got to go in there and figure it out. So I know I say that a lot, but that's the answer to a lot of questions.
Moses, Alex, Simon, Bay Area News Group.
All right, and we're going to stop there because he pretty much answered the question. He went into what I was looking for. And Moses needs to be another individual who gets promoted to a full-time role. He's earned that. It was criminal to me. I'm being hyperbolic saying that, but it was just it was nonsensical to get the Ty Jerome, Anthony Lamb run this year while Moody just rotted away there on the bench, playing in Santa Cruz, DNPs. Just made no sense. And that's what we're going to end the show on today is Steve Kerr, who after game 6 was quoted, and you're going to hear it right now, as saying that the team maxed out, that this was not, in fact, a championship team. So here is the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr.
To be fair, I think this team probably, ultimately maxed out. I think, we were barely in the playoff picture for most of the year. So to make that push, to get there, to win an epic first-round series, and then, to give the Lakers, a fight in this series and have our chances, that puts us in the top, among the top, 8 teams in the league. That's probably where we should be. This is not a championship team. If we were, we'd be moving on. So you can look at the year in total and see all the ups and downs, and there was all kinds of stuff that went on and adversity that hit, but our group stayed together and competed till the end and made a pretty good run.
And the reason why that clip bothers me is because it wasn't that long ago when Steve Kerr was on another show still saying that the Warriors were championship contenders and going so far as to say that they could win a title without Andrew Wiggins. Here was Steve Kerr back in 2 months ago, if that, a month ago, saying the Warriors are still championship contenders.
It's a real thing. You're a basketball team trying to win games, trying to win a championship. Can you win a championship without Andrew Wiggins?
I think so. I mean, I really believe in this team. I think the fact that we traded for Gary, and the way that Jay has stepped up in Wiggs' absence. If you look at last year's team, we had the two on-ball defenders in Wiggs and Gary, and you plug JK into that Wiggs spot now. It's not as seamless as it was a year ago because we had a whole season together and we had all that rhythm and continuity. But I do feel good about our chances, just with the talent that we have and the experience that we have.
That was Steve Kerr on Tim Kawakami's show. It was obvious to this humble host who had been saying it all year, this team has problems. But if they had followed Bob Myers' vision, which was to play Kuminga all year, play Moody all year, who knows what would have happened if Wiseman was at least coached and given some confidence. Maybe he could have given you some help in the postseason. Who knows? My point is, this season was an abject failure when it comes to the way Steve Kerr handled it. And now we can't trust him. I mean, that was a month and change ago. He was saying this team's a championship contender. Now he's saying it's not a championship contender. He had to see with his own eyes, apparently, the team lose before he finally was convinced of that sad reality. So that's where we are now. And for the rest of the offseason, we're going to break it down. We're going to obviously report on any trades, on any free agent moves. We're going to have cap experts. We're going to have draft experts. We're going to have trade proposals, great interviews, hopefully. Ryan Rollins was supposed to be on the show months ago. Maybe he'll come on the show. Maybe we'll get other players on the show. But we're going to start with Kylan Mills, my partner in all this. She'll join me tomorrow. Again, follow the program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. That's where we announce our start times. We'll go live and we'll answer all your chat questions and comments as well. Thanks as always for joining the program. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, it does mean the world. Yeah. And onward, Dub Nation and the Golden State Warriors go. Thanks so much for joining me. And we'll be back at this soon. Take care.